And then I wake up on the floor in the kitchen like, He goes, old enough to talk to me like a man, old enough to get your ass beat like one.
Rick Harrison, the face behind Pawn Stars, has always been known for his sharp eye, quick wit, and, of course, his incredible car collection. For years, he's showcased some of the rarest, most iconic vehicles in the world. Each one a story, a memory, a piece of his legacy. Fans have marveled at the gleaming classics, the limited editions, and the jaw-dropping restorations, never imagining that one day Rick might have to let them all go. But now, shocking news has sent waves through the collector community and his fans alike. Rick Harrison is being forced to auction every single one of his cars. These aren't just vehicles, they're milestones of his life, symbols of hard work and tokens of the countless hours he spent hunting down the rarest rides. To see them go is heartbreaking, not only for Rick, but for every fan who has admired his dedication over the years. Sources close to Rick say the decision wasn't easy. It came after a combination of unexpected financial pressures and unavoidable circumstances. This isn't a story about losing interest or selling for fun. This is about survival, strategy, and dealing with forces beyond his control. Every car, from the pristine classics to the rarest collectibles, tells a story, and now each will find a new home, far from the garage where Rick nurtured them. Fans are left wondering what could possibly force one of the most successful collectors on television to give up everything he loves. And more importantly, what does this mean for Rick's life, career, and legacy moving forward? In the next few minutes, we'll uncover the full story behind the auction, the reasons no one expected, and the shocking truth about how Rick Harrison is coping with losing the collection that defined him. Rick Harrison has always been more than just the face of Pawn Stars. He's a collector, a businessman, and a man whose life has been shaped by his passions. Among all his pursuits, his car collection stood out, not just because of the sheer value, but because of the personal connection he had with each vehicle. From vintage classics to rare limited edition models, every car in his garage told a story. Some were reminders of successful deals, others were trophies of relentless searches, and many reflected years of patience and careful curation. For fans, Rick's collection was almost a symbol of his personality, bold, meticulous, and full of history. Visiting the Harrison garage, walking past polished chrome and gleaming paint, felt like walking through a museum of automotive history. But the unthinkable has happened. Rick Harrison, the man who seemed untouchable in both business and collection, is now facing a situation that has left him no choice but to auction every single car he owns. The reasons behind this decision are complex. Sources close to Rick explain that it wasn't impulsive. For years, the cars were more than just investments. They were a source of joy, a connection to his family, and a reflection of his identity. But a mix of unexpected financial obligations, legal matters, and shifting priorities created a pressure that even Rick couldn't ignore. It's not simply about money. It's about making tough choices in the face of circumstances that demand action, no matter how painful. Inside the Harrison family, the decision was met with shock and sorrow. Rick's son, Corey, who grew up around the cars, recalls the countless nights they spent polishing engines, checking tire pressures, and debating which vehicles were worth keeping. Every car sold is not just a loss of value. It's a piece of family history being handed over to strangers. The emotional weight is enormous, even for someone as experienced as Rick. For years, Rick built his identity around knowing the value of things, spotting rare finds, and preserving history. This auction challenges all of that. Watching his prized possessions leave one by one is something Rick has never experienced before. It's a humbling reminder that even the most skilled collectors and businessmen can be caught off guard by life's pressures. Fans and collectors alike are reacting with disbelief. Social media has been flooded with messages of support, shock, and curiosity. Questions abound: why now? What prompted such a dramatic move? And perhaps most importantly, how will Rick Harrison continue his legacy after letting go of the collection that has defined him for decades? Despite the emotional toll, Rick remains pragmatic. Friends say he's focused on moving forward, ensuring that the auction is handled carefully, and that each vehicle finds a new owner who will appreciate it as much as he did. The decision may be heartbreaking, but it also reflects the resilience and clarity that has defined Rick Harrison throughout his life and career. In the coming days, as each car is sold, fans will get to witness the reality of what it means to part with a lifetime of passion. What might look like a loss on the surface is, in many ways, a test of character, and for Rick Harrison, that test has only just begun. As the auction date approached, the reality of the situation began to sink in for Rick Harrison. For years, he had carefully curated his collection, handpicking each car for its uniqueness, history, and value. Every vehicle carried a story, a memory of a deal won, a road trip taken, or a special moment shared with family. Now the thought of seeing each one sold to strangers weighed heavily on him. Preparation for the auction was meticulous. Cars were cleaned, documented, and appraised, each detail recorded to ensure the highest value. But no amount of planning could ease the emotional strain. Rick was forced to confront not just the financial side of the sale, but the personal attachment he had built over decades. Some of the vehicles had been in the family for years, while others were rare finds that took months, even years, to locate. Letting them go felt like erasing a chapter of his life. Friends and fellow collectors observed Rick closely during this time. They described him as calm and composed on the surface, but those who knew him well could see the tension beneath. "It's hard for him," one insider explained. "These cars are part of who he is. This isn't just business. It's personal. Each one is a memory, a story, a piece of him." Fans, meanwhile, reacted with shock and curiosity. Social media exploded with speculation. Why would Rick Harrison auction such a prized collection? Was this the result of a financial crisis, a business dispute, or something else entirely? While some were sympathetic, others could not imagine how a man so successful could be in a position to sell everything he loved. For Rick, the auction was a balancing act. He needed to make sure the sale went smoothly, maximize the value of each car, and maintain his reputation, all while dealing with the heartbreak of parting with decades of passion. Some cars were sold quickly, snapped up by collectors who recognized their worth. Others lingered on the auction floor, waiting for the right buyer. Each sale was a small victory, but also a painful reminder of what he was losing. The process also brought back memories of his rise to fame. Rick remembered the early days of Pawn Stars, when he built his reputation not just on the items he bought and sold, but on his honesty, knowledge, and eye for detail. Cars had always been more than just vehicles. They were symbols of his dedication and taste, proof of his ability to spot rare opportunities. Selling them felt like letting go of part of his story, part of the legacy he had worked so hard to create. Despite the challenges, Rick's resilience became evident. He handled negotiations with professionalism, ensured buyers were serious, and carefully tracked each transaction. Even in the face of such an emotional ordeal, his business instincts remained sharp. The sale, though painful, was executed with the same precision and attention to detail that had defined Rick Harrison's career for decades. By the end of the first day of the auction, it was clear that this was more than a simple transaction. It was the end of an era, a farewell to a lifetime of memories, a collection that had been meticulously built and passionately maintained. And for Rick Harrison, it was a moment that tested both his emotions and his resolve, forcing him to confront the reality that sometimes even the things we love most must be let go. As the auction progressed, the emotional weight of each sale became harder for Rick Harrison to bear. The cars weren't just vehicles. They were a timeline of his life, markers of memories, and reflections of his journey as a collector and businessman. Every polished engine, gleaming hood, and vintage interior carried a story he had lived, and now, one by one, those stories were being passed to strangers. Some of the most valuable and sentimental cars went first. Collectors from across the country placed bids that reflected both the rarity of the vehicles and the prestige of owning a piece of Rick's collection. For fans who had followed Pawn Stars for years, the auction felt surreal. These weren't just any cars. They were the ones Rick had proudly displayed, photographed, and talked about on television. Seeing them leave was like watching an era of television and collector culture dissolve before their eyes. For Rick, each transaction was a delicate balance of pride and sorrow. He knew the cars deserved to go to people who appreciated them, but letting go of something he had nurtured for decades was far from easy. The auction also forced him to reflect on why this moment had arrived. While financial pressures and unforeseen obligations played a part, Rick admitted privately to friends that part of him felt a bittersweet relief. Maintaining a collection of this scale requires time, energy, and resources, things he realized he could no longer dedicate in the same way. The sale, while painful, allowed him to focus on what mattered most: family, health, and future. Opportunities. Media coverage of the auction exploded. Headlines painted the event as a shocking financial crisis, a dramatic turn in the life of a beloved TV personality. But those who knew Rick closely emphasized that this wasn't a reckless decision. It was calculated, practical, and deeply considered. He was choosing the future over nostalgia, acknowledging that sometimes letting go is the only way to move forward. Friends described Rick's demeanor during the auction as surprisingly composed. He interacted with buyers, shared stories behind select cars, and even offered advice on restoration and maintenance. Each interaction reminded people that Rick's connection to the collection was more than monetary. It was emotional, deeply personal, and woven into the fabric of who he is. Even while saying goodbye, he ensured that the cars would continue to be appreciated and cared for. As the day drew to a close, Rick reflected on what this sale meant for him. It wasn't just about losing material possessions, it was about confronting change, embracing the reality that life evolves, in recognizing that even the most cherished aspects of his past can be transformed into new beginnings. For viewers and fans, the auction was a lesson in humility, resilience, and the emotional complexities of letting go. The story of Rick Harrison's car auction isn't just about vehicles or financial pressures. It's about a man who has spent decades building a legacy, only to face the unexpected challenge of parting with it. And as each car found a new owner, it became clear that while the physical collection might be gone, the memories, the lessons, and the impact of Rick's passion would remain, both for him and for the fans who have followed his journey for years. As the final cars were prepared for auction, the emotional reality of the situation fully hit Rick Harrison. What began as a practical decision had become a profoundly personal ordeal. Each vehicle leaving his possession symbolized not just years of collecting, but decades of dedication, moments of triumph, and memories shared with family and friends. The garage, once a vibrant display of his passion, began to feel emptier with every sale. Fans following the auction online expressed both sympathy and amazement. Many had admired Rick's collection for years, seeing it as a reflection of his eye for rare finds and his unmistakable dedication. Social media was filled with comments like, "I can't believe he's letting these go," and "These cars weren't just vehicles, they were pieces of history." For those who grew up watching Pawn Stars, this auction felt like witnessing the closing of a chapter, not just for Rick, but for a part of television history. Despite the growing attention and emotional strain, Rick maintained his focus. He ensured that every transaction was handled properly, that buyers understood the story behind each car, and that nothing was rushed. This approach reflected the same care he had applied to collecting over the years. For Rick, the auction wasn't about simply selling cars, it was about honoring them, respecting their value, and ensuring that they would continue to be appreciated long after they left his hands. The sale also sparked reflection. Rick realized that the auction, though painful, offered a chance to redefine his priorities. With the collection gone, he could devote more time to his family, focus on his health, and explore new opportunities in his career. The cars had represented more than passion. They had represented a commitment to a lifestyle he had built. And letting go allowed him to step into a new phase of life with a clearer perspective. By the end of the auction, Rick had successfully sold every car. The garage, once filled with gleaming metal and polished chrome, was now empty, silent, yet full of memories. Walking through the space one last time, Rick reflected on what this experience had taught him: resilience, the importance of adaptability, and the bittersweet nature of letting go. Every vehicle had a story, every sale had a lesson, and every memory remained in his heart. For fans, the auction served as a reminder of Rick Harrison's enduring spirit. It was not just a story about cars or money, but about a man who faced a difficult, unavoidable decision with dignity and focus. The collection may have gone, but the legacy, the knowledge, the expertise, and the dedication that Rick has always embodied remains intact. Ultimately, the auction was more than a sale. It was a testament to Rick Harrison's ability to navigate life's unexpected challenges, to make difficult choices without compromising his integrity, and to find strength in moments of loss. While the cars may now belong to new owners, the story of Rick Harrison's collection, and the man behind it, will continue to inspire collectors, fans, and viewers for years to come.